My dear brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when heaven becomes silent, when your prayers feel like they are hitting a wall, when your heart whispers, "God, where are you?" I remember a story of a man who stood in the middle of his darkest night. Everything around him had collapsed, his plans, his strength, even his hope. The world told him, "This is the end." But what he didn't know was that heaven was preparing a shift. You see, God does not always move with noise. Sometimes His greatest miracles begin in silence. And at a moment you cannot predict, at an hour when your soul feels stretched to its limit, God releases a divine warning to your spirit. Not a warning of destruction, but a warning of transformation. A moment when your heart suddenly feels different. A moment when your faith rises without explanation. A moment when fear begins to fall off your spirit like chains breaking in the night. That, my friends, is the moment when God begins to lift you into a higher spiritual dimension of faith. Not by your power, not by your wisdom, but by the Spirit of the living God. Today I want to talk about that moment, the moment when heaven touches earth, the moment when God interrupts your ordinary life, the moment when you will feel His presence shifting your destiny. So open your heart, because what you are about to hear may be the very signal that God is about to move in your life. There are seasons in life when everything becomes quiet around you. The noise fades, the excitement disappears, and even the things that once gave you strength begin to feel distant. Many people think that when life becomes silent, God has stepped away. They believe the silence means abandonment. But often, the silence is not absence. The silence is preparation. Before God performs a great shift in a person's life, there is often a strange and powerful quietness. It is the kind of quietness that makes you look deeper into your soul. It is the moment when you begin to notice things inside your spirit that you ignored before. Your heart becomes more sensitive. Your thoughts become more reflective. You start asking questions that you never asked when everything was comfortable. Sometimes God allows this silence because He wants to pull you away from the noise of the world. When life is loud, it is easy to depend on our own strength, our own plans, and our own understanding. But when everything slows down, when doors pause, when answers seem delayed, your spirit begins to search for something greater. That is when heaven begins to whisper. Many people in the Bible experience this moment of silence before their greatest transformation. Think about the time before a miracle appeared, before a breakthrough arrived, before God revealed His power. There was always a period where things looked uncertain, a period where the path ahead was unclear, a period where faith had to grow quietly beneath the surface. In that silence, something begins to change within you. At first, it is small, almost unnoticeable. You feel a gentle stirring in your spirit. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is simply a growing awareness that something is shifting. Your heart begins to sense that God is preparing you for something beyond what you have known before. This is the warning many people do not recognize. When God is about to elevate your spiritual life, He often sends a signal deep within your soul. You begin to feel uncomfortable with the old patterns that once defined your life. The conversations that once satisfied you begin to feel empty. The distractions that once entertained you begin to lose their power. It is not because life suddenly became worse. It is because your spirit is beginning to wake up to a higher calling. God starts separating you from the ordinary so that you can step into the extraordinary. Sometimes this process feels confusing. You might wonder why certain relationships grow distant. You might question why opportunities seem to pause. You might ask why the things that once worked no longer bring the same results. But this moment is not meant to break you. It is meant to prepare you. God understands that before He can lift you higher, He must strengthen the foundation of your faith. If He raised you to a greater level without preparing your heart, the pressure of that new dimension would overwhelm you. So in His wisdom, He slows things down. He quiets the environment around you. He allows your spirit to listen more closely than ever before. During this time, you may notice that your prayers begin to change. Instead of simply asking for things, you begin seeking God's presence. Instead of chasing answers, you begin desiring His guidance. Your heart becomes more open. Your spirit becomes more aware. This is the beginning of a spiritual awakening that many people overlook. They try to escape the silence instead of embracing it. They rush to fill the quiet moments with distractions because they fear what they might discover within themselves. But the ones who recognize the purpose of the silence begin to grow in ways they never expected. When heaven prepares a shift, God begins shaping your character. He refines your patience. He deepens your faith. He teaches your spirit to trust even when the path is unclear. The silence becomes a training ground where your heart learns to depend on Him more than ever before. There is also a deep emotional process that takes place during this season. Hidden fears may rise to the surface. Old wounds may become visible again. Doubts that you buried long ago may begin to challenge your confidence. This is not a sign of weakness. It is part of God's work within you. When light enters a room, it reveals everything that was hidden in the darkness. In the same way, when God begins preparing your spirit for a new dimension, His presence exposes the areas of your life that need healing and transformation. It can feel uncomfortable, but it is also the beginning of freedom. Gradually, as you remain patient in the silence, your perspective begins to change. The quiet moments no longer feel empty. They begin to feel sacred. You start realizing that God has been working behind the scenes all along. Every delay, every pause, every moment of stillness was shaping your heart for something greater than you imagined. Your spirit becomes more sensitive to God's guidance. Small impressions begin to feel powerful. Gentle convictions begin to lead you in new directions. The silence that once felt confusing now becomes a place of clarity where God prepares your spirit for the moment when everything begins to shift. There are moments in the spiritual journey when something begins to change deep within your soul, even before anything around you changes. It does not always come with thunder or dramatic signs. Often it begins quietly, like a gentle stirring inside your heart. You may not understand it at first, but you begin to feel that something is different. Your spirit becomes more alert, more sensitive, as if heaven itself is touching the deepest part of your being. Many people expect God's movement to appear in visible miracles or sudden breakthroughs. But before the outward change happens, there are inner signs that begin to appear within your spirit. These signs are not always easy to explain. They are experiences that you feel more than you see. One of the first signs is a deep hunger for God that begins to grow within you. Things that once filled your time and attention no longer satisfy your soul the way they used to. You may still go through your daily routines, but inside your heart, there is a quiet longing for something more meaningful. You begin to crave moments of prayer, reflection, and connection with God in a way that feels stronger than before. This hunger is not something you create on your own. It is often the Spirit of God drawing you closer, preparing your heart for a new level of spiritual awareness. You begin to notice that when you spend time in prayer or worship, your spirit feels alive in a deeper way. Even a few quiet moments in God's presence can bring a sense of peace that you cannot explain. Another sign that many people experience is a heightened sensitivity to truth. Your conscience begins to feel sharper. Situations that once seemed normal may now feel uncomfortable if they pull you away from your spiritual purpose. Words, attitudes, and environments that once had little effect on you now seem to affect your spirit more deeply. It is not because you have suddenly become fragile. It is because your spirit is being awakened to a higher level of awareness. God begins refining your heart so that you can clearly recognize what aligns with His purpose and what does not. This sensitivity becomes a guide that helps you move in the direction He is leading. At the same time, you may also experience an unusual sense of restlessness. This restlessness does not come from anxiety alone. It is often the feeling that you are standing at the edge of something new. The life you have been living begins to feel too small for what your heart is sensing. You might feel as though your current environment no longer fits the direction your spirit is being pulled toward. Dreams that once seemed distant begin to feel closer. Ideas and visions start appearing in your mind with surprising clarity. You begin to imagine possibilities that you never considered before. This restlessness can sometimes be misunderstood. People around you may not see what you are feeling, and they may encourage you to remain comfortable where you are. But deep inside your spirit, you sense that God is preparing you for something greater than the life you have known. Another powerful sign is the growing awareness of God's presence in everyday moments. Situations that once seemed ordinary begin to feel filled with meaning. A conversation, a verse of scripture, or even a quiet moment alone can suddenly carry a message that touches your heart deeply. You begin to notice patterns and guidance that you might have ignored in the past. Certain words seem to speak directly into your situation. Certain opportunities appear at just the right moment. You start realizing that God has been involved in the details of your life in ways you did not recognize before. Along with this awareness, often comes a deeper emotional experience during prayer or reflection. There may be moments when your heart feels overwhelmed with gratitude, even without a clear reason. At other times, you may feel a strong conviction that moves you to seek change within yourself. These emotions are not simply reactions. They are often signs that your spirit is being touched and shaped by God's presence. As your heart becomes more open, your relationship with Him becomes more personal and more real. You may also begin to feel a surprising increase in courage within your spirit. The fears that once held you back begin to lose some of their power. Situations that once seemed impossible start to feel achievable through faith. It is not that the challenges disappear, but your perspective toward them begins to shift. Faith begins to rise inside you in a way that feels almost natural. Instead of focusing only on what could go wrong, your heart begins to believe that God is capable of guiding you through the unknown. Another sign that often appears during this time is the sense that certain doors are closing while others begin to open quietly. Some paths that you expected to follow may suddenly stop moving forward. At first, this can feel disappointing, but over time, you begin to notice new directions appearing that align more closely with the calling growing within your spirit. The more you pay attention to these spiritual signs, the clearer they become. What once felt like small impressions begins to feel like guidance. What once seemed like coincidence begins to look like divine direction. Your spirit continues to grow more attentive, more receptive, and more prepared for the moment when the inner transformation begins to influence every area of your life. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when the old patterns that once defined your life begin to lose their hold on you. It does not happen all at once. It is often a gradual awakening where you begin to see the changes that were always there, even when you did not notice them before. These changes can take many forms: fear, doubt, unhealthy habits, limiting beliefs, painful memories, or the expectations placed on you by others. For a long time, many people live within these invisible boundaries without questioning them. They learn to adapt to them, to function within them, and sometimes even to accept them as permanent. But when God begins preparing a person for a higher level of spiritual growth, He first reveals the chains that must be broken. This revelation can be uncomfortable because it forces you to confront parts of your life that you may have avoided. You begin to recognize how certain thoughts have been shaping your decisions. You start noticing how fear has influenced the paths you chose or the opportunities you avoided. Suddenly, what once felt normal begins to feel restrictive. God often allows this awareness to grow slowly because breaking chains is not simply about changing behavior. It is about transforming the way your heart and mind understand your identity. When you begin to see yourself through the lens of faith rather than limitation, the chains that once seemed unbreakable start to weaken. One of the strongest chains people experience is the belief that they are defined by their past. Mistakes, failures, and painful experiences can leave deep marks on the soul. Over time, these memories can create a quiet voice inside the mind that whispers that you are not worthy of something greater. That voice tells you to stay where you are because the future cannot be different from the past. But when God begins lifting a person into a new dimension of spiritual life, He challenges that voice. Through prayer, reflection, and the movement of the Spirit, a new understanding begins to rise within you. You start realizing that your past does not have the authority to control your future. This realization is not always immediate or easy. There may be moments when old fears try to return. Doubts may try to convince you that change is impossible. But every time you choose faith over fear, another link in the chain begins to weaken. Another chain that often holds people back is the desire for approval from the world around them. Many people spend years shaping their choices around what others expect, fearing criticism or rejection. They limit their dreams because they worry about how others might react if they step into something greater. When God begins to elevate your spiritual life, He slowly shifts your focus away from human approval and toward divine purpose. You start understanding that your calling is not determined by the opinions of others, but by the purpose placed within you by God. This shift can create tension at first. Some people may not understand the changes they see in you. They may question your decisions or doubt the direction you are taking. But as your faith grows stronger, the weight of their expectations begins to lose its power over your spirit. Breaking the chains of the old dimension also involves letting go of environments and influences that keep your spirit from growing. Certain habits, conversations, and routines may have once felt comfortable, but as your awareness deepens, you begin to see how they limit your potential. This does not mean you reject the world around you or judge others harshly. Instead, it means you become more intentional about where you place your energy and attention. You begin choosing environments that strengthen your faith, relationships that encourage your growth, and activities that align with the direction God is leading you. During this process, God often teaches the importance of inner discipline. Breaking chains requires consistent choices that reinforce your new identity. Prayer becomes more than a routine. It becomes a source of strength. Reflection becomes a way to stay aligned with your spiritual purpose. Faith becomes a daily decision rather than a distant idea. As these choices accumulate, the transformation becomes visible not only within your heart, but also in the way you approach life. Challenges that once discouraged you now become opportunities to grow. Obstacles that once seemed overwhelming now appear as temporary barriers that faith can overcome. You begin to walk with a new sense of freedom. The fears that once controlled your thinking no longer dominate your decisions. The doubts that once filled your mind begin to fade as confidence rooted in faith grows stronger. The breaking of chains is rarely a single dramatic moment. It is a series of awakenings, choices, and spiritual victories that gradually reshape your life. Each step forward creates space for a deeper understanding of who you are meant to become. As the chains of the old dimension continue to fall away, your spirit becomes lighter, clearer, and more prepared to move into the greater purpose that has been waiting beyond the boundaries that once held you back. There are moments in life when you begin to realize that the journey you have been walking has been leading you towards something greater than you ever imagined. After the seasons of silence, the awakening of your spirit, and the breaking of old chains, there comes a time when you begin to sense that you are stepping into a new level of purpose. It is not always dramatic at first, but deep inside your heart, you feel that your life is moving in a different direction. Stepping into what God has prepared often begins with a shift in the way you see yourself. For a long time, you may have measured your life by your limitations, your past experiences, or the expectations placed upon you by others. But when God begins to lift you into a higher level of spiritual awareness, your identity starts to change. You begin to understand that your life is not defined by what you have been through, but by what God has placed within you. This new perspective gives you a sense of clarity that you may not have felt before. Decisions that once felt confusing begin to feel more obvious. The direction your heart is pulled toward becomes stronger. You start recognizing opportunities that align with the calling growing within your spirit. Sometimes these opportunities appear in unexpected ways. A conversation may spark an idea that changes your path. A moment of prayer may bring a vision or a deep sense of direction that stays with you long after the moment has passed. Doors that once seemed closed may begin to open quietly, inviting you to step forward with courage. At the same time, stepping into a new level often requires faith that stretches beyond your comfort zone. The new dimension that God prepares for you may look different from the life you have known. It may require you to trust Him in ways you have never trusted before. There may be moments when the path ahead feels uncertain. You may wonder if you are truly ready for the responsibility or the challenge that lies before you. These moments are natural because growth always requires courage. But as you continue moving forward, you begin to realize that God does not call you into something without also giving you the strength to walk through it. One of the most powerful changes that happens during this transition is the growth of your faith. Faith becomes more than an idea or a belief. It becomes a way of seeing the world. Instead of focusing only on the obstacles in front of you, you begin to see the possibilities that God can create, even in difficult circumstances. This perspective changes how you respond to challenges. When problems arise, you no longer feel completely overwhelmed by them. You begin to approach them with the understanding that every challenge can become a stepping stone towards something greater. Another important part of stepping into what God has prepared is learning to trust the process of growth. The new dimension is not always reached in a single moment. It unfolds step by step. as you continue to follow the direction placed in your heart. Each small step of obedience becomes part of a larger journey. Each moment of courage opens the door for another opportunity. As you continue moving forward, you begin to see how the experiences of your past were preparing you for the responsibilities of the future. The struggles you once questioned now begin to make sense. The lessons you learned during difficult seasons become tools that help you guide others. The faith that was strengthened during quiet moments becomes a foundation that supports you when new challenges appear. During this stage, your influence may also begin to grow in ways you did not expect. When a person walks confidently in the purpose God has placed within them, others often notice the change. Your words begin to carry more weight. Your actions begin to inspire those around you. People who are searching for hope may feel drawn to the peace and clarity they see in your life. Your journey becomes a reminder that transformation is possible. The experiences that once felt like personal struggles can become sources of encouragement for others who are walking through similar challenges. Stepping into the new level that God has prepared is not about becoming perfect or having every answer. It is about living with a growing awareness that your life has meaning beyond what you once imagined. It is about trusting that the same presence that guided you through the silence, the awakening, and the breaking of chains will continue guiding you as you move forward. With each step, your confidence in God's guidance grows stronger. What once felt impossible begins to feel achievable through faith. The vision in your heart becomes clearer, and the path ahead begins to unfold in ways that reveal the depth of the purpose that has been waiting for you all along.